This video is supported by Rocket Railways Reclaimed for all the spares you need for your model railway. Please click the link in the description below.
Hello and welcome back to Galgormhall. I'm continuing this week with the look at the Wills Craftsman Kits, and if you remember last time we finished with me having said that I would cut out the windows on the front wall of my template. That is now done, and I'm now ready to move on to the next stage, and that's using the brick sheets that come in the set. So let's make a start. First of all, these brick sheets, if you recall, I do need to put two together, and we'll come to that in a minute, but there are just a couple of little things to look at with the sheets before we actually make a start and do any cutting. If I turn one over, and hopefully we can get it into shot here. Let's see if we can find one. Here, here, and here, and then also down the other side, there are little lips on the brick. That there is essentially so that whenever you put two together, it helps as a slight guide in order that they join up nicely. Now I find that sometimes these are more of a hindrance than a help, certainly whenever joining two sheets together. So my first port of call is to shave them off just with a Stanley knife to make the edges nice and smooth, and then you can follow that up with a little bit of sandpaper if so needed. But that is my first job on prepping these sheets ready for cutting. Now with those all cut and trimmed and ready to go, we are now ready to look at cutting our windows out of the wall. As I did mention previously, we do need to join both of these together, but I'm going to leave that until after I finished cutting out the portals. If I put this up against the plastic, you can see that all the window apertures fit onto the one plastic sheet. I would much rather cut these out first and then glue the bottom section on afterwards, so that any sort of plastic strips that are binding the two sides together don't get in the way. So first of all, what we need to do is to gauge the amount of plastic card that we're going to use. Now in my case here, this edge here is completely straight, as there'll be another building directly next to it, so I don't need to miter this side, but I do want to miter this side so that the gable wall joins up nicely with that, and I'm going to start with that first before doing anything else, because the miter edge will be my marker for placing the template over the top of it. So in terms of mitering edges, it's simply just taking a ruler, and really for this job here you do need a Stanley knife rather than a craft blade. They're just much more robust, and in actual fact before we start I'm going to change that blade for a brand new one. With this sort of cutting job you really do need a good sharp knife, so always start with a brand new blade. So much like I do with the scratch builds, and I'm mitering a corner, I'm putting the craft blade approximately at a 95-degree angle and just running it down the length of the ruler. I'm not placing much pressure on this, as I want the blade to do the work. By putting the pressure on, it means the ruler may slip, and equally the Stanley knife slips and you're missing a digit. Okay, so with that cut, hopefully you can see we've got a nice sort of sharp 45-degree type angle that whenever it comes to adding the gable will help create a nicer flow round the corner. It may be necessary to sand that edge and also the top edge of it too, because the plastic does tend to fold up a little bit. Now we're ready to put our markings for the window in. Now rather than working from the front, I prefer to work from the back, so that if there is a slip of the blade before it comes right the way through, we're not actually scoring any of the brickwork. So what we need to do is we're going to turn it upside down so that we know that the board is exactly flush with the top of the plastic sheet. And at this stage here, you can always add masking tape to it to hold it into place. And we're just going to stencil right round the edges of our cutout. And hopefully you can see at this stage the benefit of having mounted the template onto stiffer card. It does make this sort of process an awful lot easier and more accurate too, for that matter. We now have a nice clear marking of all the positions on the building. Now I do need to cut some of this left hand edge off, but again I will do that at the end and we'll get a nice straight edge once everything is cut through. Now the fun bit, the cutting of this is incredibly tedious. It's approximately 1.5 to 2 millimeters thick, and it does require an element of patience to cut through this. So whenever working on it, I tend to work one window at a time, or at least one row of windows. So I'm going to cut the two shop windows, and I'm going to start with the top line. Now this is easier said than done whenever I've got a camera sat right in front of me. And it may not be that visible, but hopefully you'll get the idea. Now by doing two cuts at the same time, we know that whenever it comes through on the proper side, the brick will run nice and true all the way along it, nice and even if our line is, you know, if we cut this and then we come back to this one, we may find that we're sort of half a brick course out, so we know that it's going to be accurate. Now I need to repeat that process the whole way around. All I've done at this stage is done two easy passes of the blade, and I'll do that, repeat that process for all the other apertures before I actually start cutting right through to the other side. So let me finish that off and then we'll come back. Okay, I've repositioned the camera in the hope that you can actually see this a little bit better. I have now cut out all of the windows just with that sort of double pass on each of the lines, so we're not even through to the brick on the other side. At this point here I tend to go freehand, and again I'm still just using the Stanley knife, and I'm just going to do gentle passes right around each window until I start feeling actually coming through to the other side. Now this does take time, and it's better to work slowly and methodically at it than rushing it. Otherwise you do find that the blade goes astray a little bit, and that's when the problems arise. So just keep this sort of practice up until you get right the way through to the other side, and it will require turning it and working it from the other direction too, so that you get into each individual corner. And you'll know that you're getting close because you'll see the white line appearing on the front, and eventually that will break through. So this is incredibly dull, so again I will do this off camera, but hopefully you've got enough from that to be able to appreciate what is actually required to get through one of these very difficult plastic sheets. Alright, you join me back just as Storm Dudley rages across the UK, so if you hear a lot of wind in the background, that's it, and I can't really do an awful lot about it. Essentially where we've got to is all the windows are now cut out except for this last one. I just wanted to show you the actual process of it. You'll see that the white markings are coming through, so the blade really has cut down through, and if I press in from this side with the slightest of pressure, I should be able to feel it starting to go. In actual fact it's not, and I need to cut it just that little bit more through. So if we give it another go, and I'm doing it from this side here rather than from the back, because if there is any sort of snap and damage to the plastic, it will happen on the reverse rather than on the actual brickwork itself. There, it's beginning to go now. Okay, and you can see that I'm now left with some rough bits, but we can fix that just with a craft blade. Just with the craft blade, I'm going to run it up the edges and try and make that corner nice and square, and just repeat it the whole way around should there be any little blemishes that need fixing. Now hopefully to the eye that should have nice square edges, and it's the same all the way across. And if we look also along the bottom or along the top, our brick courses should sort of be fairly representative. So we've pretty much got a full brick course all along the bottom, so our cuts are good. So with that done, it's time now we can start the assembly, and I have been doing a little bit of work in the background with regards to that. So I have the gable wall cut, and what I've done is I've also added the extension. Now if you remember, I did say that it would be a cement render at the bottom, but I've opted against that and I've decided just to go with the brick instead. I have enough brick there to make that alternative arrangement, and that's, I think it just looks better for the building rather than doing that render at the bottom. On the reverse, I've used couple of the offcuts of these windows, and I've put those in there to add additional bracing. This has also been edged as well, so that whenever it's, or mitered, so that whenever it marries up with the shop front, it'll hopefully give a nice tighter join. So with the bottom of this one here to do, and I have the strip of plastic cut and ready to go, and I've also ensured that whenever I marry the two up, that the brick courses still overlap each other rather than being a symmetrical pattern, which would look wrong. So first up will be a little drop of plastic weld, and we'll glue this from the front, and that way then we can ensure that we are getting the line or the bricks lined up correctly. Now once that's gone off enough at the front, we can flip it over, and then we can repair the back side of it too by just running a little bit more of the plastic weld down the seam. And then as an added little bit of support, again we will use offcuts from the window apertures and create an additional little bit of support. Now just before we marry up the gable end with the front, what we need to do is address this side here. This is still too long, so we're going to take our template again and we'll lay it flush along this edge here, which means then I can run a pencil mark along this side here, which denotes the length of the building, and then with my ruler and Stanley knife we can give that a cut. Now this would have been much easier if it hadn't been for this little support thing, but we're still able to work around it. In actual fact, I'll just place another bit of plastic in underneath to help keep the ruler level. Now in the instance of my cut here, I have done it at a 90-degree angle rather than the mitered edge, because there will be another building going on here. If you're building this structure just as a standalone unit, you would need to miter this edge as we have done with that. If you're working with 90-degree angles of a corner on your building, the Craftsman's kits provide these nifty little corner pieces which essentially give you that 90-degree angle. So what you would do is you take one of those off, glue it on the inside on one of the edges of the triangle, and then put it right up to the edge, and then you glue your other piece to that, and it just adds a little bit of additional support and ensures that you're getting that 90-degree angle. Unfortunately, because mine is, as I've said, on a little bit of a beyond the 90-degree point, I needed to make a little template out of card. So this is the actual angle that the wall of mine sits at. So by using that there, I've then been able to, again using offcuts, cut the appropriate angle which I need for the building. So I am going to glue one of these up near the top. I don't want them to foul in around the floor. Am I putting a floor in this? I haven't decided yet, so I better leave it there. So I'll put one right at the bottom and one up near the top so that they're all out of the way, and we're just going to again use plastic weld to put those into position. And I'm going to keep it as close to the edge of the mitered cut as possible. Now with that on, then I should be able to offer up the gable wall, and in making this gable wall I've ensured that the brick courses run in the same line as the ones on the front, so that whenever it meets at the corner there, you shouldn't be able to see any difference between front and rear of the building. Hopefully also you can see from the mitered line does make a huge difference in terms of its appearance. There is still a little bit of a seam line there, but that can soon be cancelled out with a touch of filler, or even a touch of plastic weld can sometimes help it too. So I'm just running another drop of plastic weld along the inside edge of that joint to start with, just enough to let it grab, and then I can hopefully put it upright and make the required adjustments. And we'll just glue off those support brackets on the inside too now. There we go, that's not looking too bad now, and in actual fact this slightly longer angle just adds a little bit of additional definition to the building rather than that square structure. So I'll take this over to the layout, and with just one or two more things to do, and that will complete this basic structure of the building. Now at this point of the video I should be taking you over to the layout to show you the walkthrough of measuring up the dimensions for the gable end and the back side of the house, plus a little chat about spacing that's left for the little building that will have to go on at the end. Unfortunately, I seem to have lost that little bit of footage that I have put through, so hopefully what I show you next, you'll still get the gist of what was involved. It's very much a case I can't go back and do it again now, because as you'll see now in a minute, the rest of it, the building has now been constructed. But apologies for that, and back to the video. Okay, so I've moved on a little bit since I last spoke to you, and as you can see here, we've really got quite a substantial building in place now. As I said, I was going to go away and I was going to create a back wall for the building, plus an end gable for the main shops, which I have already done. You will see that I have had to use brick on this section here, because the little extra build that I needed just to fill in the gap between the shop and the back scene required it, but I've decided, basically what I did was I had a look through my drawings that I have, and I came back to the old village shop scratch build that I did some time ago, and I took it. Essentially this section here wasn't far off in terms of dimensions, so I cut out another template and just made a few modifications, 2 windows below, 2 above, and I ensured that the window apertures matched the windows, that the window frames that come with the Wills kits. So in doing that, I was able to create another building next door to it, and I think it just added something by giving a little bit of a different height. I had considered originally about making it higher, that the gable end of this house here would sit above the gable of the shop, but I think this actually works out a little bit better, and it certainly looks good up on the layout whenever you see it, and this building sits that little bit lower. Again, one of those things with this Wills Craftsman's range that allows that variation of style and adjustment to suit your landscape. So in terms of this building here, it's the exact same process was done. Template used to mark out the windows, all cut out with the craft blade. That's been glued into place. Again, I had to alter the angle slightly. You can see that because of the curve of the road, the building angles ever so slightly forward of the shop, but it's all done and dusted now. Okay, we're going to leave it there for this particular episode. That is the basic construction of the building. What we'll do next time is the brickwork would be in need of getting painted, and then we can start looking at adding some of the extra details that come in those kits that really help enhance it to make it look a lot more realistic. But for now, that is it. Thank you very much for watching. If you've liked the video, please comment below and give me your thoughts. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider doing so by clicking that button down below, and click the bell so that you're notified of any future videos. And I will speak to you again soon. Bye bye for now.